good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
You're obsessed with her, and you're obsessed with her daughter!
All right, easy, Geraldo.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking the two Corys, we're talking surf punks, and we're talking a sweaty, shirtless saxophonist. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking Death by Stereo!
Oh my god, yes. Forgot all about it.
I didn't remember any of this movie. Everyone, we are talking Joel Schumacher's The Lost Boys. We have a queer-coded horror film directed by a queer director. And Joe, I know we've talked about Joel Schumacher on the Patreon, but have we covered one of his films on the podcast before?
Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot.
I know. Listeners, let us know.
I don't think we have. Yeah, I think we just did a Patreon minisode shortly after he passed because you had kind of marathoned a bunch of his films that were missing from kind of a gap list of yours. And It's a really fun episode. I always forget how fucking versatile he is. Like, he's done a lot of horror, he's done a lot of thrillers, but none of these films ever feel the same. Like, he's an interesting director that way.
No, he's like the opposite of an auteur. Like, honestly, I don't think there's a style that Schumacher has where I can look at a movie and be like, oh yeah, that's totally Schumacher. But, and while his quality is up and down, like it is a roller coaster of quality across his movies.
Indeed.
You're right, though. I do appreciate how he just tried different things every time. I mean, again, like he goes from St. Elmo's Fire, which is AKA like College Breakfast Club, to The Lost Boys, to, you know, like doing John Grisham thrillers, to doing the Batman movies, and then whatever he did in the 2000s. But I went to bat for it in that minisode on Patreon, and I will go to bat for it here, y'all. Please check out his Blood Creek, which is about Nazi zombies type thing, starring Michael Fassbender. It is not a great movie, but it's a treat. But it's not The Lost Boys.
Yeah, it sounded wild. I definitely still need to check it out. Maybe one of these days when we have a moment. But Trace, this is our motherfucking 150th episode.
Oh my god. Seems like just yesterday we had our 100th episode, and actually it was a year ago today.
Indeed. Yeah.
Well, not today, but it was a year ago.
Yeah, it was a year ago.
but you know what, though? I don't think we want to talk about this movie alone, Joe, because I know that you and I, and listeners, I mean, we've mentioned this before, Joe and I aren't super fans of The Lost Boys, and I'm really excited to talk about why that is today, so we brought in someone who is a fan of The Lost Boys.
There we go.
Everyone, she is a co-host of Black Magic Coven, a podcast that discusses the supernatural, paranormal ghost stories, cryptids, killers, and haunted forbidden places. You may have read her work at such sites like Fangoria, Slash Film, and What to Watch. She is also my co-worker at my day job, The Austin Chronicle, and a former podcast guest in our episode on Trick or Treat from last year. Please welcome Marisa Mirabal.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Yes.
And congratulations on your 150th episode. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's just been so easy. It's barely any work at all.
It's
yeah,
true.
Just a little bit.
We're like one of those celebrity podcasts where we just speak into a mic and then it magically turns into like audio frequencies the very next day. Oh wait, no, it's nothing like that. It's so much work. And yet,
but it's a job that we love. It's a job that we love. But Marisa, thank you for joining us for this and The Lost Boys. And honestly, let's kick this off.
Yes.
I sent you the list for this and you were like, oh my god, The Lost Boys.
Like right off the bat. No hesitation.
What? Joe and I are not blind to the fact that this film is very popular. I don't. Would we call it a cult film? I feel like it's a more mainstream popularity.
Yeah, because it was successful at the box office when it came out, and then I just feel like it's been embraced by people since the 80s. Like when you talk about horror films from the 80s, when you talk about vampire films, this is one that always seems to come up.
Yeah, and this set the stage for vampire lore in the cinematic universe with vampire movies, just in general, in a lot of ways. But it's also very different. too. So there's this kind of blueprint that it's set for vampire films, which is pretty cool. And it's very, very 80s. Like, you just go back in time when you watch this film. So if you were born in the 80s or grew up in the 80s, there's so much nostalgia there. It's very comforting. It's fun.
But because Marisa, you were born in the 80s, but you were probably born around the time this movie came out, right?
Yeah, I was born in 86, and I think it came out in, 89?
87.
Oh, 87. Yeah, but I have an older brother, and I was introduced to older type films, like, before I probably should have been.
Of course,
and grew up on... Yeah, I just grew up on 80s films in general, so I feel like a lot of films that were in the 80s are more from, like, my childhood and have a closer place in my heart than 90s films.
So what is your connection to this film then? When did you first see it, and why do you connect with this film?
Oh, good Lord. Okay. So, I think it was my older brother, I think, had a poster of it in his room. And I remember looking at it and just being like, I mean, it was kind of a sexual awakening thing. I mean, these guys were hot. They were, they were beautiful and so attractive. And there's something really alluring about just the poster art and how all the vampires and Star are right there looking at you. And it has this, we'll talk about Jim Morrison later, but I don't know. I was just kind of struck by it. And I remember watching it, and it was interesting because I was never scared of this movie ever. I remember a couple of scenes in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie that scared me more than the Lost Boys ever did.
Okay.
That's great.
Which is so weird to kind of say because it's not scary at all. Mm-hmm. But this film, I don't know, I always just thought I always just had these mad crushes on these vampires, and I thought they had the best lives and they had so much fun. And I mean, you throw in like comic books, music, concerts, friends, just partying all the time. Like, it just looked like a blast. And I loved it. That's
the thing, though, right? I mean, I kind of talked to Joe about this before, because neither one of us connect to this movie like its fans do. And I feel like a part of it is because Joe and I were very much rule followers. We are not of the punk counterculture group. And so while I think, but that's the thing. Like, I mean, like, I break a rule, I like break out into a sweat. So
that's not a bad thing, though. That's not a bad thing.
I don't think, but I think that, because I think the appeal of this movie, you're right. Like you said, like, I mean, the tagline for this movie is sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die. It's fun to be a vampire. It's serving this, like, this kind of punk aesthetic, and like, we're a bunch of rule breakers. We're not following the rules of mainstream society. And I think maybe that's why I don't connect with it that much, because I'm like, no, follow society, please.
Oh, that's totally why I connected with it.
Yeah.
Even when I was little, like, I did not wear dresses. I hated the color pink. I did not listen to boy bands. I was very against whatever was supposed to be expected of me by society. In a lot of ways, I still am. I don't really like traditional roles and, societal expectations. But I mean, that kind of rebellion started when I was really young. So I definitely, I think, related to that. And just doing whatever you want, staying up late, having fun and partying with friends. Yes, all the things that I liked to do from a very, very young age.
Yeah, that tagline sounds perfect for, like, describing you and what you were into. So clearly you were the target demographic of this movie.
I was. And you throw in the costume and the hair design and those boys, and it's just, like, done. They're still cute. Rewatching it every time, I'm just like, man, I'm such a sucker for this movie. Great.
Style at the wazoo, for sure.
You're horny for this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this movie is sexy. It's undeniably sexy. Like, vampires, always sexy at the best of times. Yeah, whether or not you are attracted to the rocker aesthetic is probably a personal taste thing. And I'm imagining, Trace, and I think, Trace, that's going to be one of the issues that you don't like, because these boys have long hair. Yeah. They look like rebels. They look like punks. That's not your kind of preferred twinky young boy, clean cut aesthetic.
No, but I will say, I do find Kiefer Sutherland attractive in this film, but none of the other vampires.
What do you like about Kiefer that stands out to you?
He has short hair.
Okay.
Controversially so, right?
I do like the bleached hair, although I guess he has kind of a pseudo mullet, right?
Oh, he 100% has a mullet.
Yes.
I don't love that as much. But, Joe, what is your connection to this movie? Because I feel like you and I might have similar ones.
So weirdly enough, I actually saw this film quite late in life. So this was not on my radar very much. I missed a bunch of the 80s movies because I was more of a 90s child. So my sister was really good at indoctrinating me into kind of early 90s and beyond horror. But we missed a lot of the 80s. So I had to go back and catch up on a number of different instances. And this was always just one that I thought, okay, like people talk about it. It's got a big following, and yet I was never very attracted to it. So I put it off until probably maybe my mid-20s. And I don't know if it was too much hype or, oh, this is a classic film, you have to love it. But I watch it and I think it's fine. There's a lot of things I really like about it, but overall, I just don't find it all that engaging. Like, I can understand the appeal for other people, but it doesn't quite do it for me.
Mm-hmm. My dad talked about this movie a lot. It wasn't one that he loved a lot, but I just remember him always talking about The Lost Boys. And I think it was because, and this is the weird thing, my dad loves St. Elmo's Fire. Like, fucking, I think it's his favorite movie in the world. Whenever we have like a family get together, he's always like, do you want to watch St. Elmo's Fire? And I was like, aww. but he always sold it as, oh, it's like The Breakfast Club, but they're in college. But he failed to tell us how depressing that movie is.
It's depressing.
So dark, yeah.
That was one I watched for the first time recently because it was kind of under the same, context as you were saying, Joe. Like, should I love this movie? Is this a classic I need to see? But yeah, It is dark for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and my family did grow up watching The Breakfast Club a lot because even though it's rated R, it was on TV and it's only rated R for language. And so they'd always bleep it out. So we always watched The Breakfast Club. So when I finally saw St. Elmo's Fire, I was like, oof, Jesus. Anyway. So
this is like if The Breakfast Club got dark and their lives went to shit.
I mean, it is realistic, though, right? Like the high optimism of of high school coupled with the, oh God, life in college.
Yes.
Indeed. We're actually going to talk more about that kind of principle next week, ironically.
Oh, yes, we will. But anyway, so I nevertheless, it was not a movie I was allowed to watch. And I remember, this is a tiny anecdote, but I was in 6th grade and I went to our library in the school and I found a book called Lost Boys. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't, because I had just read I Know What You Did Last Summer because I couldn't see the movie. So I was like, oh my God, I was going through this whole phase of let me just read the books these movies are based on.
I love that.
And since I can't watch the movies, and I remember grabbing it and I was going to check it out and my teacher looked at it because she heard me talking about, oh my God, it's the vampire movie. It's the book though. And she looked at it and she looked very perplexed and then she handed it back to me. And
she's like, oh, you sweet baby angel. This is clearly a spin-off of Peter Pan.
So Lost Boys is written by Orson Scott Card.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yes. And it's the guy that did the Ender's Game books and, of course, a bunch of other shit. But he's also a profound Mormon. And this book is about a Mormon family that moves to a town in 1983 and there are boys that go missing. And so, but here's the thing. I read this entire fucking book waiting for vampires to show up.
Oh, no.
I was about to say, because there is a novelization, I think, for this movie, but this is definitely not it.
I basically read the wrong Lost Boys, because this is just Lost Boys, not The Lost Boys.
Oh,
and,
I love it. It's so
funny. And it's
funny.
also kind of Mormon propaganda, because...
Oh, it's 100%, because he is a piece of shit.
So... But it is a horror novel because, I mean, and like Orson Scott Card claimed that The Sixth Sense ripped this book off because the whole thing is that like one of the kids, like he gets killed, but whatever, it's a whole thing. He's dead the whole time. But I'm this fucking like 12-year-old kid reading what I think is the book version of the Lost Boys vampire movie. And it's this Mormon propaganda book.
And then you hated the movie as a result.
Well,
where's my Mormon propaganda? I keep waiting for it.
Funny.
I don't see this movie until probably 7 years later. I'm 19 years old. I'm going to college, and I went to Walmart. And I bought like a bunch of like cheap DVDs, and Lost Boys was one of them because I was like, all right, I've never seen the Lost Boys. Let me finally watch this thing. And yeah, I kind of had a similar experience to Joe where I was like, oh, I did think it was kind of boring. I didn't really see the appeal, and I was kind of like, oh, like whatever. And I have not watched it since until this week.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Because that's what happens, right? When you're young and people tell you, oh, it's a classic, you have to watch it, you have these heightened expectations.
Sure.
If the film doesn't meet them, then what do? You're not going to say, oh, well, I'll wait a year and I'll give it another try. You're going to say, okay, well, that didn't work for me. Bye. I'm going to watch a million other things that I haven't watched yet.
Totally.
And then you start a podcast that makes you rewatch things and you realize, oh, I'm an asshole. Okay.
I will say, I did enjoy this movie I'm not going to say a lot more, but I did enjoy this more. I had fun with this movie. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this movie. I still don't connect with it. I still don't really understand why this took off so much, but maybe we'll discuss that as we go through the production, because I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's kind of fun. I really do love the last 20 minutes, like that go full Home Alone.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot of issues with, not a lot, but I have issues with like just the bulk of, well, Michael and Star.
I'm sorry, the snooze factor? Yes.
A lot of it goes down to where this movie was a couple of firsts for me. So, I think it was the first vampire movie I ever saw.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. And so my idea of a vampire movie was
this.
Oh, vampires are fucking hot and they're great. And this is so much fun, this lifestyle. And, yeah, and plus it was also, I was attracted to like the entire cast, so it was this sexual awakening at the same time, and I had crushes on all of them. And the music, I really loved the music, and I remember Cry Little Sister is still such a great song. And then there's this weird, like I was introduced to Echo and the Bunnymen because of this movie, and they covered Jim Morrison or The Doors' People Are Strange, and I actually did like a improv tap dance to that song when I was in like second grade.
What?
Well, I loved the Doors. They're one of the bands that I grew up on when I was little, because like my dad was a DJ, and like I was introduced to oldies and like classic rock through him, and then my older brother like classic rock and also metal, and so this was just all up my alley. And so I remember seeing People Are Strange was one of my favorite Doors songs when I was a little kid. It's definitely not now, but like when I was a little kid. And so I did like an impromptu little tap dance to it when I was in second grade. And everyone was like, who the fuck is this? Like, what are you playing, But it was because of that movie. And it's a really weird cover of it. I don't know, maybe they couldn't get the rights to it. But I mean, I think the aesthetic, the cast, the introduction to vampire lore, and the music just were all big factors for me from a young age.
You are right though. I mean, there were other vampire movies that sexified vampires, but this is the first one that really took off popularity. I mean, like I'm thinking back to Tony Scott's
The Hunger, yes, which absolutely sexifies vampires. I mean, it's David fucking Bowie, but it was a flop. Well, and I think that this is young vampires too, right? Like we were used to seeing vampires as like a Bram Stoker kind of thing, right? They're buttoned up, they're Victorian, they're British, they're very proper, but also sexy. Whereas this is, hey kids, you can be sexy hot and also live forever and party all night. And you can look like this. Don't you want that?
And they didn't hide it. Like,
right? Yeah, they flaunt it.
And the Interview with the Vampire was another one from a young age that I really liked. And also very attractive cast, obviously. But it just felt like such a different time period. There was something about having a vampire movie and vampires in your time period that felt like you were a part of that world and a part of that. No,
it's not Dracula in a castle in the 30s. It's not the Hammer horror Dracula that's set in the 1800s.
Right? It's more modern day, and I think that was a big appeal to its success and like intrigue for me, for sure. It's
so funny that you even say that though, because like you're like, oh yeah, I wanted to be the vampires and the Lost Boys, whereas my 90s ass was like, I want to have powers like Matilda.
Oh, I love that. I would love that too. Can we just have both? That'd be awesome. Man.
I'm sorry, I'm just imagining a crossover where, like, David has to babysit Matilda.
Or Lottie, the youngest vampire, just starts, like, dating Matilda.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a little chaste romance, yeah.
But that is a good segue, though, into, like, let's go into how this film came to be and, like, what set this film off to be kind of I'll say cultural phenomenon, because it seems like it was kind of like that. But we've got first-time screenwriter James Jeremias, and he's working on it as a grip. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I should preface this. So a lot of this information is pulled from an article that was written for Empire around the time Joel Schumacher died a few years ago. Oh, I'm sorry, last year. And it's called The Lost Boys, Joel Schumacher on making the coolest vampire movie of all time. So I've pulled this from that because there's a lot of really good information. Mm-hmm. So yes, we've got first-time screenwriter James Jeremias working on as a grip on studio lots when he just had an idea for The Lost Boys. He had read Marisa, Interview with the Vampire, and he was like, oh yeah, like the character of Claudia, it's a 200-year-old vampire in the body of a 12-year-old girl. And he was like, what if I could cross over Peter Pan with this story? And that's exactly what he did. So he writes the screenplay in the summer of 1984 with his childhood friend Jan Fisher. And their agent sends out the script, and they sold it in January of 85 to a company called Producer Sales Organization, henceforth to be referred to as PSO. They had a deal with Warner Brothers, and they bought the script for $400,000, which at the time was a very significant...
I was going to say, that is a lot of money. Holy...
I think, so the issue is here. PSO goes bankrupt, and Warner Brothers hires Richard Donner, director of Superman and also director of The Goonies, to direct it. Yes. Donner liked it, but he wanted the Peter Pan references jettisoned, and he wanted to make the boys older. So he didn't want them to be teenagers, he wanted them to be fucking. Like, he wanted them to be, like, in their early 20s, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, driving, doing drugs, having sex.
Yes. And honestly, in an age of today, where it's like, oh, we're doing like gritty reboots of like, silly comic books and whatever, like the fact that this was like an idea for this film, I'm like, I don't want that version of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this movie succeeds because it is fun. Like, can you imagine a morose version of this? Oh, wait, it's called The Covenant. Never mind.
And PG-13.
Oh my god.
So Donner wanted them to write a third draft with him, but by that point, Jeremias and Fisher were unavailable. They were writing a screenplay for Paramount, but I couldn't figure out what this was, because they haven't really done anything since this movie, which is kind of upsetting. So Donner instead hires Jeffrey Boehm, who had written David Cronenberg's The Dead Zone. Unfortunately, Donner was then offered Lethal Weapon to direct, so he was like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go direct that. And he stays on this film as executive producer, which, again, the fact that we're doing this a week after Clue, and we're talking about how John Landis was supposed to direct Clue, got something else, and then stayed on as executive producer, like, this is just our track here.
Mm-hmm. I think it happens more often than we realize. Like, we often think, oh, okay, a director and a writer shepherd this film through the whole production cycle, and it's like, nah, man, people come and go on movies all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Donner's wife, who was producer Lauren Schuler, she had actually just produced St. Elmo's Fire. Take a drink every time we say St. Elmo's Fire. And he's like, oh my god, like, get Joel Schumacher, he'll be perfect. So Joel Schumacher goes to a lunch meeting with Warner Brothers executive Mark Canton. And Schumacher was borderline offended that he was being offered this kid's vampire movie.
Can we also say that in this article, Schumacher admits that he was drunk on Bloody Marys, and he's like, oh, excuse me, it's the drinking. And I'm just like, so relatable, Joel Schumacher. So relatable.
Bitchy gay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Canton is like, dude, fuck off. You should be you're lucky that we're even offering this movie to you. So he took it. He reads the draft and he's like, oh yeah, it was very much Goonies Go Vampire. Which, I mean, when was Goonies? 85, 86?
Something like that, yeah. But it was so much more innocent. That's the thing. Like,
but I feel like you can see the genesis of that still, right? Like, that's what the younger brother, the Corey Haim character is, right?
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Marissa, do you like the Goonies?
I mean, I do.
The pause, the breath.
I know. I mean, probably not as much as you would expect me to, but I like it okay. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but, it's good. I like it. I didn't connect with it a whole bunch, but, it's fun.
Marissa, you sound like me talking about this movie.
Well, do you love the Goonies? How do you feel?
I do love the Goonies.
Wait, are you serious? You do, Joe?
I do. I love the Goonies. I think it's a fantastic
God, that's
movie.
So great.
Oh my god, that's funny. I have seen half of the Goonies. And I do not like the half, because I'm a firm believer, if you have not finished a movie, you cannot say you don't like the movie, because you have not seen the movie.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So, that being said, I do not like the half of the Goonies that I have seen.
Was it the first half or the second?
No, yeah, it was the first half. It was at a high school party. I'm saying at a high school party. It was a theater party. Like, we weren't fucking drinking and doing drugs.
Okay, I was about to say you watched a movie at a party in high school.
Well, let me set the scene. It was in a hotel that had sunk in an earthquake, and we were drinking blood and eating Chinese, and...
But because I feel like the Goonies and the Lost Boys, those are those two like 80s like group of boys band together type movies that for some reason I just never connected with them, and I always chalked it up to like, oh, it's because it's a bunch of straight boys banding together and I feel left out of that circle, so maybe I'm like harboring a grudge against them. But
yes, the Lost Boys, noted straight boys hanging out together movie.
Maybe that's what it was too, though. I don't know. I mean, I like the adventure aspect of it, and I would suggest watching the second half one day because it is pretty fun. Like the setup and the traps. It's very Indiana Jones,
for
adventure.
Children.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would suggest watching it, all the booby traps and stuff, and it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take your word for it. I mean, you know what, Marissa?
I'll watch it with you.
You will watch. We'll do a double feature of the Goonies, and I think Demolition Man is the other movie that I have to see.
Oh my god, Demolition Man is the best.
I've been trying to get him on board with Demolition Man. I'm like,
oh my god,
have
Trace,
to watch
you will
this.
die.
Yes.
It is one of my favorite action films of all time.
It's hilarious, and it's so fucking great. And we have to get Taco Bell too.
Yes.
And then,
oh my god, yes.
Okay.
They did win the franchise wars, so you have to.
Oh my god. Okay, fuck y'all. So Schumacher was upset that the script for this was very G-rated. He was gonna turn it down, but then he was like, oh wait, like what if... And then started filling in the plot. So he gets the green light and he goes to reconfigure the script with Mr. Bone, takes the job. And, because he was like, oh, like, vampires should be sexy because he viewed vampires as a metaphor for oral sex. Because he was like, yeah, you're putting your mouth on someone's body and you're sucking fluid out of it. Like, that's oral sex.
Not wrong.
I mean, there's been association with, like, the AIDS,
oh, sure.
crisis in the 80s. There's a lot of association, I think, with that, and sexual association with that, I think, with vampires. But I have not heard the oral sex one, though. That's interesting.
I think just because it's so much sucking, right?
I guess. Yeah.
Oh, God, but your lips get tired after a while. Anyway, so they filmed this, and they start.
Oh my god, did they really?
The movie is filmed and it does come out. No, but the studio ended up getting cold feet just before shooting. Though they were like, oh, they wanted to hold back. Schumacher says that they were concerned the cast were mostly unknowns. They ordered a budget cut of $2 million, which is a lot of money, but the budget they had was still $8.5 million. So, like...
I don't know, man. So they had 10, and then they lost 1/5 of their budget.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Jeez.
But... And, Joe, I can't remember the movie we discussed where it was like, oh, yeah, they cut a budget, so they had to get creative with everything.
It was Excision.
Excision. Okay. So, because this budget, this $2 million that was cut, mostly came out of the art department, which meant production designer Bo Welch, and again, random aside, I only know Bo Welch because, so y'all have seen Beetlejuice, right?
Mm-hmm. Come on.
I know.
So, I'm like, you're talking to Marissa.
No,
yes.
I know. But no, so Bo Welch was a production designer on that movie. And I remember this name specifically because in the opening credits for Beetlejuice, it plays that great, the Beetlejuice theme by Danny Elfman. And there's basically a part where it really kicks up and it's like, da 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 da
yes,
da da.
It's so creepy and good.
And that's when Bo Welch's name comes up?
Yes!
Okay. Oh my god, Bo Welch, so bombastic.
Yeah, so as a kid, I just associated Bo Welch with this like surge of happiness as the music in Beetlejuice really kicked up. So when I saw Bo Welch here, I was like, oh, Bo Welch!
Well, he met, what is her name? Catherine O'Hara?
Mm-hmm.
What? Really?
He met her on the Beetlejuice film, and they're married.
Oh, shit.
Oh.
Didn't know that.
Isn't that precious? I
That's
love
so
that. And he also worked on Edward Scissorhands, too. So this guy, he does, in Batman Returns, I think also, he's worked with Tim Burton a long time.
I'm sure there are listeners that are like, duh, Trace, Bo Welch. He's like a world-renowned production designer.
Yeah, he's awesome, but I like how you affiliate his name with that. I mean, that score is just phenomenal. It's so ingrained when you hear it. But yeah, I mean, the production design on The Lost Boys is pretty fucking awesome. I really like it.
Yeah, that's what I think is so funny is you read, oh, we lost $2 million and this is still what we get because the production design of this film is fantastic.
Well, so he had to get more creative. They did. It says corners were cut ingeniously. A POV shot of a vampire shooting through the clouds ended up being unused B-roll footage Schumacher managed to wrangle from Top Gun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
But more so, the executives didn't understand what kind of film Schumacher was making. And I think Joe, I think we've had this discussion before again, but they asked Joel Schumacher, are you making a horror movie or a comedy? And Joel Schumacher replies, yes.
I love it. I fucking love it. Because yes.
That's interesting that it's like they ask one or the other when there's tons of horror comedies that have already been successful and made in the past. Like that subgenre horror comedy existed at this time.
I wonder if it's like maybe because watching this, I mean, there are noticeable stakes involved and people do die.
Mm-hmm. Wait, did you mean that with a pun intended?
I didn't, but I'll take it.
Okay.
But I just wonder if maybe the studio hadn't seen like a horror comedy where it was like equal parts horror and comedy. Like maybe they were like, hey, it really needs to lean into one or the other.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. It's interesting because like so much of horror has elements of comedy that people don't always pick up on or think about. Even Hereditary, there's a couple of moments of comedy just to like relieve that tension. I mean, in this, especially when you watch this film now and you've never seen it, it's encapsulated in the 80s. So a lot of stuff is going to be funny even when it came out that wouldn't be, like their clothes or the production design or anything. A lot of stuff could be funny, but I think that it's a really good combination of both, but the vampires themselves aren't really funny. It's more like the Frog Brothers and the Grandpa. He provides a lot of really great comedy to it.
Even like Diane Weiss, like tearing out of her fucking date when she gets the call from the son, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted more Lucy in this. I love Diane Weiss in this movie.
She's so precious.
Well, I thought too. I was like, because Marissa, I was like, I feel like the Fright Night remake with Toni Collette took a lot of narrative cues from this film, at least in regards to the family dynamic and the mother specifically.
Right. I could see that. I think Toni Collette's character is a little bit more edgy. But
right. Wait, you saying Lucy in her pastel on pastel outfits is not edgy?
I mean, I just see her as the friendly mom who takes in Edward Scissorhands too. I mean, she's just one of those people who smiles at you and she just looks like such a good, wholesome person. And she's so great for this role of being a mother to these lost boys and these vampires. And she has this really innocent quality and wholesome nature about her that I can't imagine her in like a evil role at all.
Well, she has a generous nature, as Max says.
Yeah, I mean, but like I mean, it's just so spot on. The casting in this film is just really amazing. It's really, really, really good.
So, moving back to these executives, there was a shame factor about the genre element. I think they wanted it to lean more comedy, which again, when the original script was more G-rated Goonies with vampires, and then it becomes
makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So Schumacher's like, there was a shame factor. People in marketing would say, well, it's not really a vampire movie. It's really an alienation movie. It's about the disenfranchised. And Joel Schumacher replies, no, we're absolutely making a teenage vampire movie. We're trying to make the coolest vampire movie ever made.
I mean, I would argue it is both, actually.
Yeah, I would agree. So it is shot by cinematographer Michael Chapman, who that was a big get for them because he had shot Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, although he would go on later to shoot Kindergarten Cop and Space Jam.
The old transition between genres, right?
Okay, so fun fact, Kindergarten Cop is
I love it.
filmed in Astoria, and up in Oregon, and that's the same town that Goonies was filmed in. So if you're ever in Astoria,
it's all connected.
Yes.
Oh my god! No.
If you're ever in Astoria, you can literally just like go to the houses of the Goonies, go to Cannon Beach, and then right across the way is the elementary school or the kindergarten for kindergarten cops.
Love that.
I love finding those weird connections when we do the production, Joe.
No. It makes it feel like it's a very small world.
Yeah. So the Goonies, oh my god. The Lost Boys opens on July 31st, 1987, and it is opening the same weekend as James Bond Timothy Dalton star The Living Daylights. So
nobody cared about that one.
Well, you're right, but it's still open in the number 1 spot, whereas God damn it, The Lost Boys opens in the number 2 spot. The Lost Boys opens in the number 2 spot with $5.2 million behind The Living Daylights, which I think earned like $11 million. It goes on to gross $32.2 million, again, against this $8.5 million budget. So it makes 4 times its money back.
That is legs, too.
Yeah, from $5 million to $32 million, absolutely.
Awesome.
So critical reception is mostly positive. We got a 76% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 6.4 out of 10 average. Letterboxd, we've got a 7.4 out of 10. And CinemaScore audiences, way back in 1987, gave this an A-.
Fuck yeah.
Honestly surprised.
Great. Really?
Why are you surprised by that?
I just think this is a teen film. It's about vampires, and I mean, sure, it's absolutely everything that Marisa has said. It's sexy, it's edgy, it's very of the time and so on, but I guess, I don't know, this seems like a teen film, and I would have thought that critics would ravage it.
I mean, the way that it was shot, I think, you know, it is all practical. The practical effects still hold up. The way that they use the camera in a lot of ways is really great and leaves a lot to the eyes. Like the way that they swoop in and fly. Even the opening shot, how they fly over the city. I think like from a technical standpoint.
Oh, it's very well done.
It's really well done. So I can see that, but it's really silly and goofy at the same time. It has that underlayer of silly and goofiness on top of that sex appeal. So, and gore.
But it's not overtly gory, right? I think the goriest part, and it's really quick. It's that beach attack, and you see Kiefer Sutherland bite the guy's head,
right?
Yeah,
and then there's like a split-second shot, like a couple seconds later, of him like peeling his scalp back, but you can barely see it unless you pause the movie.
Yeah, it's really not that gory. I mean, that's another fun thing is there's so many, this sounds weird to say, but there's so many fun kill scenes in it. The last act is great, and it's not your typical vampire lore. Like, they step outside of what you think would kill a vampire and how vampires look and what they do. I mean, it's just so subversive in so many ways. I think people like were interested by it, you know?
And let's not forget this is coming 2 years after another very well reviewed, but not quite as box office smash vampire movie, Fright Night.
Yeah. Huh.
AKA my preferred 80s vampire text.
Yeah, that was one that I saw when I was a lot older, actually. I remember the VHS cover freaked me out too much. I was scared to watch it.
Oh, it's so good.
I grew up with that one, like, because it was on AMC all the time when I was growing up. So, but I mean, yeah, like, you know, the 80s are bookended with again, like from beginning, middle, end, we've got The Hunger, Fright Night, and The Lost Boys, like, as you're tracking vampires through the 80s.
Oh my god. And sexy fucking vampires all the way through.
It's great.
But yeah, I mean, that's it, Joe. So why don't we dive into the plot of this movie?
All right, so Marisa has already cued us to the song of choice. Get used to it, folks. We will hear it a lot throughout this movie.
I like the song. They play it a lot.
That sex scene.
Were we paying per use, or was it like we spent too much money, we got to get our money's worth now?
I have thoughts about that sex scene too.
There was there was an interview with Kiefer Sutherland, and he was at a panel at some horror convention, was saying every time he walked into, he didn't say strip club, he said like dance bar, and everyone was like, what the fuck?
That's so Canadian of him.
Yeah, he goes, every time I walked into a dance bar, people would know who I was, and they immediately would play that song, and he just couldn't escape it for years.
Wow.
So funny. But it's so good. It's pretty hot. It's a hot tune.
when I heard it, I was, this is kind of cool. I like this. But then I heard it, 20 more times throughout the course of the 97-minute movie.
Yeah. Okay, so we are talking about Cry Little Sister by Gerard McMahon. And this is playing as we get this aerial shot. It's like a POV over the water down into an amusement park. And this is where we're immediately introduced to our antagonist, David, played by Kiefer Sutherland, and his band of Lost Boy punks. So we have Paul, who is played by Brooke Carter, Marco, who is played by Alex Winter, and Dwayne, who is played by Billy Wirth. I cannot tell you which one is which, except for how they die. It's like, that's the only way I can distinguish them.
Dwayne is my boy. Whew. Dwayne did it for me.
Because I only know Alex Winter from Bill and Ted, even though I've never seen Bill and Ted, but I'm like, he's the blonde vampire that looks like Bill or Ted, whichever one he is.
That might have been his first movie. I think it was, because he was fresh out of acting school, and they were all really young, like late 19, early 20s. But I know Dwayne, he's a Native American model who's been in a couple other different movies or shows down the road. But man, him and the guy who played Michael were my two huge crushes. Like
Jason Patric?
Yes. Yes.
Just yes.
I don't. So I think the only thing I actively recognize Jason Patric from, and it's not even a big thing, is
Speed 2.
Speed 2. And I haven't seen that movie since I was 8 years old and saw it in the theater. But I just know that's Jason Patric is Speed 2.
Yeah, he didn't really have like a booming career after that.
No, like it's this movie that makes him, and then Speed 2, which kind of breaks him.
And he did not want to be in this movie initially because he was actively like, I don't want to have to wear prosthetics. And Joel Schumacher promised him he would not have to wear prosthetics, but when the ending changed, he had to.
That's such a lame thing. I don't know. I think that's kind of lame.
Yeah, it's kind of like, come on, pretty boy, suck it up.
And the prosthetics weren't even that extensive. It was like a forehead piece, really painful contact lenses, and some fangs. You're not talking about an 8-hour sitting in the chair makeup job like, the Grand High Witch or...
Oh my God.
I was like, no, yes. Jeff Goldblum from The Fly is like, hey y'all, like...
Yeah, I mean, seriously. It'd be like, suck it up. Come on. That's nothing. But he is gorgeous. He is a gorgeous man, and he reminds me a lot of Jim Morrison, and they have that huge poster of him in their hideout. And I don't know if that intention was, or if that similarly was like intentional, but this whole life of excess and, partying and drinking and drugs and sex and that whole Dionysus kind of mentality with Jim Morrison and the Doors, with, Michael looking like him. It might have been intentional, I don't know, but he looked a lot like Jim Morrison in that movie.
I can completely buy it. And also it then kind of gives you this idea that, if we obviously read David as a queer figure, he's got this rock idol literally hanging in his hideout, and then he sees a living boy version of it. It's like, cool, I'm gonna bite that.
And I mean, we'll get to it later, but he was told to buy that by an older gay man, vampire.
Oh, Max.
I mean, let me just say, the first time I saw this, I actually was surprised that the grandpa from Gilmore Girls was the main villain of this movie.
That's who he is.
I have never seen the Gilmore Girls. That's funny.
Oh, Marissa, that seems like a very you show.
Really?
Oh, no, Marissa, I bet you would like it. It's really good. But have y'all not seen Richie Rich?
Oh, I have. Yeah.
He's the dad in Richie Rich.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so we haven't seen all of the Goonies. We haven't seen Bill and Ted, but we've seen fucking Richie Rich.
I mean, I've seen Bill and Ted. Tracy, you haven't seen Bill and Ted?
Never seen Bill and Ted. None of them.
Ooh, that's Keanu. Oh yeah.
No, I've never been interested in like the stoner surfer humor vibe, which is also why I don't love Sean Penn and oh my God, what's Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Okay.
So not my cup of tea. But I would watch Bill and Ted because I do want to watch the new one since Samara Weaving's in it.
I see what you mean. And that's another one that's just so of the times.
Yes. I mean, despite the fact that the first Bill and Ted came out in 89, I thought those were like mid-80s movies. It's 89 and 91.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does feel steeped in 80s culture. Maybe that's why.
For sure.
But anyway, yes, Edward Herman, Grandpa from Gilmore Girls.
Funny.
There we go. Okay, so we're still in the opening scene of this movie. So we no, don't apologize. This is how we roll here at Horror Queers. 150 episodes of fucking tangents all the time. Let us talk about Richie Rich for 5 minutes. Cool, we're back. All right, so yeah, I mean, this whole opening scene is very much setting the stage. This is how vampires work, but also I love how Joel Schumacher is using the camera with these POV shots, and we're showing, but also not showing, and it feels like a tease, and I kind of like it.
Well, and I got two things from this. So one was, it's kind of like Jaws. I mean, obviously they it was a budget constraint. That's why they couldn't really show them flying. But it's very Jaws-y, and then it's like, oh yeah, like let's do this. But I also feel like, and I don't know, maybe I'm just reaching here, but I feel like Hocus Pocus took some pointers from this movie when it comes to because that movie opens with like POV shots of the witches flying.
Well, and it's also used in the movie, the original The Witches. I forget what year that came out, but...
That's 90. That's 90.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a budget cut, but it also works really well because it's menacing. It's menacing. It's a way to sort of, I think, see the film or put the viewer in the perspective of the antagonist right from the start without you completely knowing that or realizing it. So you're not immediately like turned off or scared. It kind of draws you in and allures you to that side too.
Yeah, I appreciate this too because so much of this film is working within a practical range. Like, I'm sure that there's some maybe early minor CGI kind of FX work, but for the most part this is a practical film, and all I can think about is how shitty it would have looked for them to try to replicate flying.
Oh yeah, terrible.
Whereas instead it totally holds up even after all these years as a result.
I don't even as hot as those guys are, I don't think they'd look as hot if they were like flying. If I saw them flying, I don't know why. Like, I like their hair just blowing when they're, just on the ground. You can access them. I don't know.
Sex them? Sorry, what?
Both. Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yes to all. We're Joel Schumachering our way through this episode. It's just yes to everything. All right, so we're introduced to our protagonist. We have single mother Lucy Emerson, played by Diane Wiest. We have her teenage son, Michael, played by Jason Patric, and her preteen son, Sam, who's played by Corey Haim. So for those keeping track at home, that's two Canadians, because Corey Haim and Kiefer Sutherland.
Love it.
Canada rocks. Keep on going.
I will say that, and I know that she's like an ex-hippie or whatever, but the thing that stood out to me the most watching this movie this time was kind of how progressive it was in its portrayal of a divorced woman. A single mother.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, she is a divorced woman, for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I wanted to make sure that the mother part was a divorced mother. No, but I like how non-condescending the film is towards her. And it's like, I don't know. I honestly found it very refreshing and endeared me towards her so much, which is why and also, I think because of the fact that Diane Wiest had just won an Oscar before accepting this movie, so I'm also like endeared to her as an actress, her being like, yeah, I'll go do this horror comedy after winning an Oscar.
That's awesome.
She avoids that Oscar curse. She's like, yeah, I'm going to win the Oscar, and then I'm going to make a super successful vampire film. Suck it. Yeah, and she is honestly delightful in this. It's difficult after the fact because we know Diane Wiest. We love Diane Wiest, and you do want more from her. Like, her arc is basically, I move my kids to town, I live with my dad. He's a really like off the grid kind of hippie.
Yeah.
And then her story arc is basically just, I need to get a job. And then I meet the wrong man. You're like, oh, it's a bad sitcom for you.
It's so sad. Like, of course she, meets the worst dude that she possibly could,
But you know what? She ends this movie smiling, so it's fine. But
true.
I do wish she had more to do outside of just like, or I wish she found out sooner. Like, I mean, again, we'll talk about it in the climax, but I do want to pull a quote from this article in The Atlantic, and it's The Lost Boys' subtly radical vision of family by Brandon Tinsley. And he contextualizes the film within what was going on in the 80s at the time. And he says, The Lost Boys was released amid a new wave of American conservatism that had begun gaining momentum near the end of the 70s. A particular note was the evangelical preacher Jerry Falwell's organization, the Moral Majority, which marshaled right-wing Christians as a political force for the first time against abortion, homosexuality, and other supposed social ills.
Get stuffed.
The group sought to protect American family values, a term now primarily associated with the Christian right, after what it saw as the rise of a destructive social liberalism in the previous decade. The moral majority threw its full weight behind Ronald Reagan's 1980 presidential campaign, with some observers crediting the group with the win. So, of course, this film is something that is at odds with the prevailing socio-political narratives of the Reagan era.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is not a conservative film in either its like subject matter, but also its politics.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, despite my penchant for following rules, I respect that about this film.
I just think it's so funny that Schumacher wasn't initially attracted to this, and then he turns it into something that really does reflect a kind of queer sensibility, right? Like, it's about women taking ownership of their own lives, you know. We may not like the dude that she ends up going out to date, but she moves to a new town, she meets a dude on the boardwalk, and she's going to go out and live her life. And then meanwhile, we've also got queer vampires on the side.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's queer in both senses of the word. It's queer in, like, how we are queer, Joe, but it's also queer in, like, it's strange, because it's, again, going against the norms.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. And also, really, if you only take one lesson away from this movie, it's don't date men that you meet on the boardwalk.
Well, he owns the video rental store.
I actually saw somebody post that it was the best disguise that he could have ever done because he actually has access to everyone's addresses and credit card information. So it would immediately gain him access to, like, okay, who do I want to go after and so on.
And it's
like
more
that.
fun than working at like a bank or something.
Right?
And that video store is freaking cool. Like, I love
sick. Yes.
It's so cool. I love the interior design of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the funny thing is we wouldn't think he's a villain because he's almost living this counterculture life, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's an old he's a middle-aged straight white dude who's running a video store on the boardwalk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he should be cool and hip.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of his disguise. That's why he works as a villain.
I mean, well,
Yeah.
yes, but I also, and I mean, again, like, it's a 97-minute movie. Like, this movie does move pretty briskly, so, I mean, what are they going to do because this movie isn't interested in exploring him as a character or a villain, because as soon as he is revealed, he is killed within, I'm pretty sure, 2 minutes of screen time.
It's
But,
quick,
like,
yeah.
it does, like, I mean, we know why he wants Lucy to be a father for his boys, but why did he want those boys to begin with?
It's all just about her, sadly. Oh, you mean like David and his group?
Yeah, like why did he make these teenage punk vampires?
Right?
Because, I mean, it's kind of like you have to have a coven, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to live forever, like, you need someone to do the dirty work. I think it's more of like a muscle thing or having like henchmen type thing, you know?
Well, it's also, he's the one that wants this nuclear family. So if we're saying, okay, cool, this movie is going against that ideal of the 80s, it's the villain of the film, the vampire, that wants this nuclear family to be conservative.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, not to pull back too far from where we're at in the plot, but really, that's one of the things that I struggle with about this film is that it seems very pro-queer, but then it's also very conservative in the way that it ends, but it's also got some kind of sly subversions. Like, it's both pro-queer and also very pro kind of conservative family values in some other ways. So it's trying to manage too many things.
Well, it's also because we have this queer director in 1987. So, like, the peak of the AIDS crisis has passed, but it's still happening. So it's a queer director working within the restraints of the studio system in conservative America. And so I get what you're saying, Joe, but I'm also like, well, I get why there may be a muddled message there.
Well, and it's actually very similar. Like, I'm complaining about it, but it's very similar to the conversation that we had with Peaches Christ when we talked about Fright Night, because it's the exact same thing, right? Like, sexy fun times equals queer vampire, but then also at the end of the film, we've got to say, oh no, heterosexual for the win. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also weird with like Star and her whole dynamic of being a caretaker for
A child?
Yeah,
a
what the
child.
fuck?
So she's forced into a mother role, and they don't really say, like, is this your brother? Is this your son? Is this your What is this? And
who
why
is Laddie?
Yeah, why are you even around? Like
the only answer we get to Lottie is that his face is on the milk carton.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's just literally a lost boy, and she was like, "Oh, I know you're a vampire, and what's going to happen to you, and I know these dudes, so I'm going to take care of you." Which she's kind of forced into a motherly role, which sucks.
Dear Lord, you don't have to adopt this boy as a result.
You know what I mean? She just is running with these rough dudes and has this little kid around. I'm like, Star, what are you doing?
But let's not pretend that Star is a character, because Star,
no.
and that is actually my biggest issue with this movie. I love Jamie Gertz, and
Absolutely.
I'm the idiot that totally watched all 4 seasons of her sitcom on CBS with Mark Addy called Still Standing in the early 2000s.
No.
I've never even heard of that.
So, for those keeping track at home, no to the Goonies and no to Bill and Ted, but yes to 4 seasons of this Jamie Gertz show.
It was critically reviled, but for some reason, it lasted for 4 seasons. I loved it. But anyway,
of course,
I love Jamie Gertz, and also if you've never seen her Gilda Radner TV movie, she's amazing as Gilda Radner.
Oh.
But Star
I
is
gotta go. We got cows.
Star is nothing in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. She's in Twister. But yeah, I actually do want more of her.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she is a prop.
She's like she's prey and a prop. That's really it.
That's what I love. It's like, if you want to lean into the queer reading of this, I just love the fact that we've got a queer vampire saying, I'm just going to use this hot chick as a honeypot so that I can score my Jim Morrison wannabe boyfriend.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
David does not give a shit about Star.
Yeah.
No, of course not.
I know, it's there's a lot of toxic treatment, hidden toxic treatment towards women in this. It's not like so much abusive, but it's just their place that they're in. You know what I mean? And like what they're used for, what their roles are supposed to be. Yeah. And it's odd. Rewatching that as an adult, I mean, I never really identified with Star. If anything, when I was younger, I was jealous of her. But as an adult, I'm like not jealous of her at all, because that kind of sucks. Like, you just don't, nothing. Well, what are you doing?
There's nothing to identify with, though, because there's no character traits to her.
Right.
Except for what y'all have already said.
Well, this is such a masculine movie, which is, in a way ironic, right, Marissa? Because you're saying, oh, I was so sexually attracted to all of these men. And you're like, yeah, because there's nothing else in this movie. It's just like machismo, sexual charisma. Yeah. And if that doesn't appeal to you, then it's like, sorry, I got nothing for you.
Yeah, I mean, in Star's role, I mean, there's also very little dialogue there that she talks about, too. It's interesting because I think Schumacher wanted to go on and make a sequel called The Lost Girls and have an all-female cast. And I wonder if he envisioned something down the road for Star, and maybe that's why she didn't really have such a strong presence in this film, but that could be a stretch.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all we can do is speculate at this point.
Yeah.
He did want Drew Barrymore in that sequel, though.
Oh, that'd been fun. Especially
he wanted a blonde for Star. Like,
oh, yeah.
Right. The only reason Jamie Gertz got hired is because Jason Patric was in Solar Babies
for
with
her.
Yeah. Yeah, he went to bat for her.
Huh. I mean, I think it works. The way that he was describing, I think, like he wanted a blonde pixie who like hung out by the beach. I like the wild-haired bohemian type Star, you know?
I do too, actually. Yeah, I mean, I think she looks good in this movie.
Yeah.
I wish she had anything to do.
Right.
Yes.
It's just not a movie about her.
Yeah, like lure boys in and babysit Lottie.
That's I mean, again, not a huge issue, because to me, this is just a kind of a fun vampire movie. But there are a lot of players here. Like, I mean, I would even argue that Edgar and Frog, I'm kind of like, wait, who are these boys? Where are their parents? Like, what is their...
They have no parents.
Why do they care about vampires so much? Like, these aren't really important questions, but I'm just like, again, there's so many different things here that the movie is juggling, mostly well, but it's often at the expense of any kind of, like, characterization.
I think, it goes back into this theme of being a lost boy. It's probably just them, like, they work at the store, they go out, they have fun, their home life probably isn't great like everybody else's, and they find refuge in other things like comics and slaying vampires, and someone has to do it because they're everywhere. And I don't know. I mean, I kind of like, actually, that there's not a whole bunch of backstory with these characters. We don't see glimpses into the vampire's backstory, or Max, or Star, or even the mom, or the brothers, and yet it works. Like, normally that would piss me off, but no, I think it works here.
Right, but I mean, like, have Edgar and Frog faced a vampire before, or are they just like, hey, kids, is Max the first vampire in this? I mean, again, I get what you're saying, right? Like, do we want to have flashbacks or exposition explaining these things? Honestly, no, this movie doesn't need those things. But I'm just kind of like, but like, why are they so into vampires? Have they seen them before?
Well, there are sequels to to this film, but I have never seen them. So I wonder if they explore that in the other ones. But once I started learning there were sequels, I was like, I'm not engaging.
I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I have not heard they are good movies.
No, they're not good.
No, I haven't heard anything great about them. And I kind of just wanted, it sounds so pretentious, but I wanted my world of Lost Boys to stay what it is and not change. And so maybe they explore that, in the sequels, but I wouldn't know.
Well, listeners, if you've seen the other two films, let us know. I feel like we kind of already have a sense, but... Okay, so this is all fascinating, but can we please talk about the sweaty saxophone performance? Because I didn't know that Tim Capello doing I Still Believe on this beach stage, I didn't realize this was a fucking phenomenon, and yet I see this motherfucker gift all the time.
Yeah, I don't know why. Honestly, it's one of those things where I feel so out of the loop. I too have seen this GIF everywhere, and I'm just like, okay.
I mean, I get it. He is jacked. He is glistening. He is wearing tight pants and a David Bowie codpiece. Like,
the ponytail is...
I mean, this is why it's not resonating for Trace, because he's looking at the ponytail and just immediately disconnecting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not resonating for me either. That's probably that's probably the character that I'm least attracted to in the film.
I think it's supposed to... I think people think he's funny, though. I think it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very performative and just so over the top. And seeing the reaction in the crowd is so into it. And
they're eating it up.
I have never been to a show, anything remotely like that, where someone could... I mean, even seeing Gwar live, it's like, what do you...
See, and Trace can't respond to that because we've tried to educate him on what Gwar is, and he still doesn't get it.
We're gonna watch Empire Records one day. We talked about it.
Joe's already told me.
Yeah.
I've had 3 people on this podcast tell me to go watch Empire Records. I will watch Empire Records one day.
Because it's so fucking good.
Oh, that whole concert and that scene is so over the top and so funny. I'm not familiar with his music or him like as a performer in general, but
I mean, that's the thing that surprised me is that he is a legitimate saxophonist. This is like he's playing himself.
Yeah, that's him. That's his vibe.
The first time I saw this, I actually thought that he was going to be a vampire later on because he has the same aesthetic. It's like punk rock mixed with WWE kind of look.
Oh yes, definitely WWE kind. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine if that happened. That's really funny you thought that.
That's my sequel, my preferred sequel, please. Okay, so a lot of this early scenes, it's, setting up relationships. So we've got Lucy meeting Max at the video store and asking for a job, David and his cronies kind of lurking about, Michael making eyes at Star, basically stalking her. Yep. It's mildly uncomfortable in a contemporary context. And then, yes, we've got the Frog Brothers, Edgar, who is played by Corey Feldman, and Alan, who is played by Jameson Newlander. And they're kind of the resident vampire buffs in town.
I will say, so because in this article that I pulled from the production, they talk about like how the whole cast is basically holed up at a Hollywood Inn. Mm-hmm. And Schumacher's like, hey, Alex Winter apparently called it basically a rave in the hotel. Schumacher goes, yeah, take a bunch of 13-year-olds and a bunch of 18-year-olds and put them in a hotel. There were chaperones for the 13-year-olds, but, well, I'm not going to say another word about the 18-year-olds. That being said, though, I mean, like, Corey Feldman's come up front about, like, how he fucked up a line on set one day because he had been using coke the night before. And I'm like, you were 15, man.
Yeah. Yeah, the substance abuse issues were prevalent. This is a film that is partially sponsored by cocaine.
Yeah.
And I think it's really tragic when you dig into some of the backstory of the two Coreys and the fact that they did not have good showbiz lives. And of course, Haim has died at a very early age. And there's just a lot of darkness around like sexual assault and drug use in their respective lives.
Yeah. And I mean, I think at this point, I mean, even I was known. Schumacher says that he knew that whatever Haim was going through was not good. Like even during filming of this movie.
How he was 15 at that time?
I think he was 14.
Yeah, Feldman would have been 15 because he was born in 71, and they're filming this in 86. So maybe he was 14 going on 15.
There we go.
Nevertheless, he was using cocaine, like the night before filming.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued because, like, obviously there's a lot of queer reading potential in this film, and I think most people focus on the relationship between David and Michael, but I actually feel like Sam is the one who comes off as most queer-coded for me. Not just because we have a Rob Lowe poster in the bedroom, the fact that he needs his mom to tuck him in, the way that he dresses, which is obviously not appropriate for the new place that they're living and is maybe just reflective of who the character was, but it all comes off as like cute baby gay.
Yeah, he's also, I mean, I don't want to, flamboyant seems like the wrong word, but he is a very animated preteen or teenager. Compared to Michael's, like, stoic, pale and tragic demeanor.
He seems like he's kind of, like, on the cusp in a lot of things. Like, he's still very young in a lot of ways, like you were saying, like, getting tucked in and not, not closing the closet door, or, like, singing and taking a bubble bath, you know what I mean? And just, he brings, like, a very innocent kid nature to the film, whereas everyone else is just kind of very serious.
Right. But you can, I mean, if you want to read Edgar and Frog as queer too, you can also view them as like, oh, hey, like we're the two outcast gay kids in the town.
Right.
Welcome, new gay kid.
It does feel like that, right? I mean, the reason that they band together is because they have a shared love of comics. And I do love that there's almost an indoctrination scene for both like David and Michael. It's like, okay, well, you got to ride this motorcycle and drink this bottle of booze / secretly my blood. Whereas with these preteens, it's so much more innocent. It's prove that you know comics history, and so then cute. I'll let you into my secret club.
It's horror Twitter today.
It's gatekeeping.
I
was like, why are they gatekeeping him? This is bullshit. I mean,
oh no,
ridiculous. But I do like how they talk about the lore of vampires through comic books instead of some ancient 300-year-old vampire who tells his story, or like some old ass book made of human flesh. Like, I love that it's comics. I think that's so fun of the time.
And this is very much part of the counterculture element that this film is bringing in, right? It's saying videos and comic books are what the kids are looking at these days.
Yeah.
So we want to bring that element in and say, well, you can get your horror knowledge from these new texts as well.
Yeah.
Because even like, I'm thinking of Fright Night, where it's like, oh, I get all of my horror knowledge from Peter Vincent, the late night aged horror host who is like basically getting shoved off because he's not contemporary anymore. Here it's like, read this vampire comic. You'll learn everything you need to know.
And like, that's a very serious comic you're talking about there. Like, I don't.
Oh my god,
it's so funny. It's great.
So good. Okay, so let's jump ahead to Michael and David's sort of big scene. Because, we use Star to get Michael onto this motorcycle race. They go through the beach, through the woods, into the fog, almost over a cliff. And then we're into this hideout, which is the Sunken Hotel. And we've got David playing tricks on Michael with the Chinese food. And then he drinks this bottle of very red wine, even though Star's like, maybe don't. Hey,
I will say, though, this Sunken Hotel, I mean, again, I know it was supposed to be, it's also like a cave. Nevertheless, it looks like early production design for Steven Spielberg's Hook, which is really appropriate given the title of the film. But it does look very Peter Pan Lost Boys-y.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a cool combination of just artifacts and a place to just hook up and get fucked up and hang out. Like, it's...
And sleep on the ceiling.
Yeah, it's very much thrown together like a teenager. And I love how the boom boxes in the movie, they go grab the boom boxes and listen to music. It's just so fun. Like, I miss my boom box, you know?
The technology that we don't have access to anymore.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate how expedient it is in getting to the point. Like, he drinks this blood. I mean, I'm sure, well, I mean, I don't know how early in the film. I think we're like before the 30-minute mark of this movie. If not, we're very close to it. But yeah, I like that we're like, cool, bam, let's get him in.
Yeah, so a lot of people make note in the queer readings of this film that we start off with this kind of like hallucinatory montage, and it's Star's face, and then that switches and goes into David's face. And I don't know, it's interesting when we talk about films as queer, and I think sometimes, Trace, you and I were bad at just conflating queer and gay, because I do think that there's almost a bisexual, there's a bisexual reading of this film, because it is very much a love affair between, ooh, do I want the bad boy or do I want the ethereal girl?
Yeah, that's true. But I also have like this image of him being like, hey, he sees Star's face in the fog and he's like, ew, no. And then like David's face shows up and he's like, oh, yes.
Yes. Billy Idol. Sure. Why not?
No, but you are right. You can absolutely view this as a bisexual or pansexual text.
Right. Well, and I do like how even just the costumes are very, the guys are wearing jewelry, they have long hair, they have makeup, they have tight pants, they're not afraid to explore these types of looks that may be deemed more feminine. And it is very like David Bowie-esque, it works. It just works so well. I don't think they're trying to be overly masculine in a way, but they still have this like masculine sort of like demeanor a lot of times, but the costume and the hair and the makeup doesn't entirely reflect that all the time.
Yeah. I came across an interesting piece that talked about the fact that one of Michael's transition symptoms into being a vampire is that he starts to wear not just sunglasses, very cool, but also an earring. And of course there's like a long legacy of gay men wearing earrings on a certain ear to connote like it's kind of the hanky code only with earrings.
That was a thing, because I literally, like, I was always just told that, like, that was just how you could tell. Like, I thought that was something kids made up in school to be like, oh, if you get pierced on your left ear, you're gay, or whatever ear. Maybe it's the right ear. Like, you're gay.
Yeah, so here's the thing. It is your right ear, but it is also an urban legend. It's one of those weird things that everybody seems to know, but nobody can really pinpoint it. And it's very much not a thing anymore. Also, if you're watching this film closely, Michael wears it on his left ear, so that would be suggestive of the wrong one if you're doing a queer reading. Right. But it's an interesting thing nonetheless, where you're just like, oh, that is an outdated queer kind of lexicon that doesn't make sense to contemporary audiences, but might have been very relevant to audiences of the day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you saying that, I had forgotten all about that. But I remember that, I guess, urban legend or that kind of stereotype from when I was younger. But I mean, now it's just like, it doesn't matter, like whatever. But
right. Also, sometimes you can just wear an earring.
Yeah. But I mean, when if you're gay, you had to worry about being, and you were still closeted and having to find discreet ways to express yourself. Right. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, for my coming of age, when I was about to come out, the known signifier was if a man had an eyebrow ring. That was how you knew he was gay. I
mean, even though, like, in the dialogue in this scene, though, like, David tells him, how far are you willing to go, Mike? So it almost sounds like a game of gay chicken, where it's like, you put your leg on your hand on each other's knee, and you keep moving up and up and up and up, and the first one to back off. Like, that's what it reminded me of.
Gay chicken.
It's just so funny too, right? Because a lot of the way that David acts is very, like it's macho, but in a kind of false bravado sort of way, where you're just like, yeah, but you basically just want to suck on this guy. But sure, go on and ride your motorcycle and wear your leather and be butch and so on. Which is not to say you can't be both, but so much of what Kiefer Sutherland brings to this role to me is that kind of like I don't know. There's a performativity to David's masculinity in this film that I really like. And it honestly just makes me wish that we were either doing the David and Michael storyline or that we were doing the Sam and the Frog storyline, because we don't get enough time with anybody for my liking.
I get enough of the David and Michael. I would like more of the Sam and Frog stuff. Personal preference.
Yeah. So before we move on to sort of like the next phase where Michael is like fully vampiric, I do want to address this initiation where they're hanging off the bridge as the train goes by. So this is kind of the redux of the how far are you willing to go, only the dialogue switches and it becomes let go, like basically stop trying to prevent what you actually are from coming out. I love the way that this looks. I think it is so fucking visually exciting, and watching people fall into the fog and thinking that they're probably just dead is very exciting. So Michael eventually lets go and he falls, and it transitions to him waking up in bed. And folks, I read this as a post-coital scene. So it's like, I let go and I wake up in bed the next day and I am a changed man.
Well, because we don't see, because he just falls and then it just fade cuts to him falling into bed, right? Yeah, so we don't know. And also it's because the 80s, they can't show these two men fucking.
Oh, sure. No. And of course, you know, the fact that a man drinks another man's blood, as you said earlier, Marissa, it's like, okay, so, the AIDS.
I was thinking about that, though. So, I mean, okay, again, just the mere because we're all like, okay, yeah, whatever. Vampires suck other people's blood, like, out of their neck, whatever. It's not, like, whatever. But if you think about it, like, again, like, go up to someone and, like, put your mouth on their neck. Like,
it's so intimate.
Yeah, very intimate. Like, you're in the personal space.
Just a little, yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, it's again, imagine like these fucking straight men, like, oh yeah, hey, if you want to drink someone's blood, you better be comfortable getting on their neck and giving them a real super hickey. I'd love to see all these no homo guys try to do that.
Yeah, real men suck blood. That's what we're saying.
Break boundaries, physical boundaries.
Okay, so Michael has officially become a teenage boy because he has bad breath and long nails and he's sleeping all day. I'm going to bring in a different reading. It's by Vrij Keiser, called Boys Beware of Vampire Punks, Queerness in the Lost Boys. And I'll bring them in more at the end of the film because they have a pro-queer reading, even though, like, there's some conservative kind of family values that get restored at the end. But I did like this idea that The Lost Boys initially sets it up as, oh, well, Michael's really just becoming a teenager. Like, he talks back to his mom. He doesn't want to babysit his younger brother. He wants to go out and fuck chicks and party all night. Cool. Teenager.
I do like his mom, though, being like, we're still friends, right? Like, I mean, also very Gilmore Girls-y of this mother.
I know, she's so precious and so sweet and supportive. Like, she's trying her best, you know?
She needs a wine mum friend. Like, she needs to go out and meet another single lady and just get, like, hammered on red wine.
Or smoke some of that weed that her dad grows in the backyard.
Oh my god.
Like, what is Grandpa doing all day? Is that how he manages this
he gets
giant
high
fucking
and makes
house?
Taxidermy.
But I think he's also preparing for vampires.
Yeah.
As we learn at the end, yes.
Yeah.
Also, hey, Grandpa, do you want to warn us that this is, like, a very shady town? Maybe give us a heads up.
Oh, right? Yeah. Like, a heads up would have been great. And, I mean, I do like this, like, even his career and role as a taxidermist plays into this whole duality of life and death. I love that. I love that.
That's a very clever observation. I hadn't really made that. I just thought it was a kooky character trait that, again, lends the production design some extra oomph in this house. So Lucy is asking Michael if he can babysit younger brother Sam because she is going on a date with Max. And all I could think of was, ma'am, you just started this job. Also, he's your boss. Like, it is not appropriate that he has asked you out.
Yeah. It's a little creepy and a little quick.
I mean, this is how you know that we've all become adults and we're very, like, stable and following the rules and things like, no, bosses should not date their employees. That is wrong.
Well, I'm just like, don't fuck with my money. So, you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
but to be fair, I mean, and like maybe this is, I don't know, it's just a rental store. It's not like it's some big corporation.
Watch him have chains. That's what the sequel should have been. He
Yeah.
had video chains all over the U.S. run by other little lost boys.
Oh my god, now I'm just imagining a sequel that's like, the real vampire is Blockbuster, putting the mom and pop shop out of business.
Yeah, that's the real bloodsucker.
Okay, so, there's like this scene where Michael hallucinates / it doesn't, that there are motorcycles running around the house. That's fine, whatever. I do like the scene where he nearly attacks Sam in the bath, and the only reason he doesn't is because the family dog, a husky Nanook, ends up biting him. And this is where Sam realizes, shit, my brother is a vampire. So he calls the Frog Brothers for support.
It's such a pretty dog. I love that dog in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's gorgeous, yeah. Although it's like, it's weird that we have 2 dogs in this movie that are both attack dogs in various circumstances.
Yeah, they're like husky breeds, I think.
Did we get buy one, get one free kind of deal?
Right? I love Thorne, too. And they talk about him as a hellhound, like when they explain, the brothers explain the traits of the vampire, like they have a hellhound that guards their master.
It's very
layer.
comic booky, though, right?
Yeah, totally. It's great.
Oh, it is.
It all goes back to it, you know? It's so campy.
Okay. So Sam calls the Frog Brothers and they kind of run him through vampire tests and he's like, shit, okay, we got a problem. And this is when Michael starts to have his own issues with the levitation. And I will say this scene comedically is really good for me. Mm-hmm. So we've got Lucy abandoning her date in a rush, not even telling Max what's going on. She just peels out of this parking lot. We've got Michael floating around like he's an extra in Salem's Lot. And we've got Sam calling everyone, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. This all really worked for me.
No, this is the moment where the film hooked me, actually, because it's just pandemonium happening. And again, watching Max just watch her, like, hightail it to her car.
Too funny.
This is a real funny and fun scene.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So this is also where the brothers kind of make this pact that they're gonna try to protect Lucy by not telling her the truth. And again, if we read this as a bit of a coming age film, then it makes sense that the kids would try to keep things from their mother, who doesn't really understand what's going on because she's out of touch with the counterculture movement and the teenagers and so on. But just as an FYI, kids, if you let your parents know that weird shit is going down, it may help you in the future.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely can relate to that to an extent. When I was a teenager, I mean, I was keeping secrets and going out and staying out and smoking and drinking, and I was pretty bad, so, you know. Show
of virtual hands, who has snuck out of their house as a teenager?
Oh my gosh.
I haven't.
I've never done
really?
I don't even think I could. I wouldn't, like, okay, no. You know what? My sister was the one who was sneaking out all the time. Like, she had secret boyfriends. She was going to parties. She was breaking curfews. And because of that, I stayed at home. I watched Counter-Strike on Saturday nights. I, had dinner with my parents all the time.
I love y'all. That's so sweet, though.
Well, okay. No. I lived on the second floor. My window had a screen on it, so I would have to punch it out. We had an alarm system, so every time any door that led to the outside opened in our house, it beeped.
Yeah.
And my parents' bedroom was right by the front door, so I literally had no option to escape my house.
Well, sometimes I just didn't even come home. Or like,
oh, my mom would know. My mom would know.
Or like, I don't know. I mean, or you'd say you were spending the night at a friend's house and really go out somewhere else, or go to that friend's house and you'd sneak out from there. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Marissa's like, I don't have to justify my sneaking to you boys.
No, Marissa, there's no doubt. I'm envious of you. I'm jealous. I wish I could have snuck out and done all this fun, cool shit, but I didn't.
I mean,
I couldn't.
I partied a lot in high school, but it was... It was all because I watched The Lost Boys really young.
I blame the movies.
I blame this movie. But, I mean, I kind of get that, though. Just, like, wanting to figure your own stuff out. And, yeah, and you get caught up with the wrong crowd, you know? And you move somewhere new, or you don't know a lot of people, or you went through something that not a lot of people can relate to, and then you find some people who are sort of on your wavelength a little bit, and you just get caught up in it, and before you know it, you're in too deep. It's kind of like an addiction, and I think that goes into like being a vampire, being, you know, driven by, or being a teenager and being driven by like lust or partying or rebellion, what have you, anything really. You just get caught up in stuff and your own ego and just doing what you want to do to feel good and have a good time and forget about the world, you know?
You're absolutely right. It is about the ego and the kind of narcissism. It's also about like these raging hormones. And I think that that's one of the things that this film captures, right? It is addictive. Like, you can understand why Michael is attracted to this lifestyle, because he's got people who want to party with him. He's got this hot chick. He isn't contained by the rules, the oppressive rules of his mother's lifestyle, even though, let's be honest, she's pretty easygoing.
Yeah,
in a
she's
lot
pretty
of ways.
chill.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about the way that this film captures the sexy rebelliousness of it all. Am I coming around on this movie? What's happening?
No, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, again, like, this is still a 3-star film for me, but I enjoyed watching this so much more because I wasn't waiting for whatever was supposed to blow me away. Like, I thought there was something that was going to.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So speaking of blowing away and being rebellious and going out, we're up to the sex scene, folks. Yeah, so this is when, you know, Michael sneaks off so that he can go and sleep with Star. So instead of staying behind and doing dinner and all that kind of fun stuff, he ends up going off and having sex.
Okay, so I wrote in my notes, I was like, Michael goes to the cave and asks Star to help him, and she kind of cries, and then they just fuck. Like,
okay, honestly, that's... Teenage boys
Marissa's
do
like,
that.
That's how all sex scenes typically
somehow...
No, that's what boys do.
That's what boys do. That's what teenage boys do. And that's what guys do sometimes, is they'll act like, oh, I care and I'll be there for you. And then they really just want to fuck you. Like, that's so common.
She felt his tumescent member bursting out of his tight pants.
Oh my god. We'll get back to Reginald's quivering member later.
Is it?
No, but like, hey, so, you know, there's that whole rule in screenwriting where it's like, okay, if you take this scene out, it doesn't make a difference in anything of the film. I would argue that you could remove this sex scene. We already know he likes her. The sex scene doesn't, like, add to their relationship because Star's not a character in this movie.
I think it shows her lack of loyalty towards David.
Right.
But she could very well be having sex with all these dudes. You don't know. Like,
Ooh.
Maybe she's a slut, just like her mother.
Oh, wow. I'm not saying that. I mean, they could all be very fun to hook up with. I mean, look at this. Look at this.
I'm sure they are.
So, you know.
But they're busy having a circle jerk while she's sleeping with Lottie.
Oh, God.
Like, sorry, literally sleeping with Lottie.
Okay,
yes.
I was like,
not
what?
fucking.
No,
just
Lottie's
sleeping.
like 10, but it's just, I think that it's a way to show her switching over her loyalty and wanting to get out of the lifestyle that she has been in. And she's kind of like a damsel at that point. Like, save me and Lottie, you know? Like...
And that is what I don't like about it.
Sucks,
So, you know what? You have convinced me the sex scene can stay. I still just, I just don't care. I don't care about them as a couple at all.
No, they're not. I still don't really root for them. I'm not like, yeah, they're together. I mean, it's a tasteful sex scene.
Yeah.
It's quick. It's cute. It's weird that it's to the song of Cry Little Sister, I think, again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what? It was the seventh
God,
time?
That's a drinking game of itself every time you hear that song in the movie. But it goes back to these aspects of, like, this nuclear family, and like I always thought that was kind of weird. Like as much as I love that song and how it sounds, like the lyrics of it, what you don't a song to really have sex to. It's really weird.
Well, not straight sex either, because isn't it a man singing about like how he wants to fuck this girl's brother?
I don't know. Is it?
I saw the lyrics and somebody definitely said like, oh, here's the section where it's talking about how he wants to fuck the sister's brother.
Lord. I mean, maybe. I don't know. It's the lyrics of it. I haven't read the whole lyrics, but even just like the cry little... It's so weird.
The one of the verses is, cry little sister, thou shalt not fall. Come to your brother, thou shalt not die. Unchain me, sister, thou shalt not fear. Love is with your brother, thou shalt not kill.
Yeah,
okay, that's like way too religious and way too like brother-sister stuff for me. Just do an instrumental without the lyrics for the sex scene. You know what I mean?
Right? Yeah. Yes. Do a tasteful, just, piano something.
Just the instrumentals.
Maybe with a violin.
No.
This movie is too punk for piano.
Fair.
But I mean, I think it does serve a purpose, and it is tasteful, and it definitely makes sense in terms of how it comes about and how they hook up. But it doesn't really make me root for them as a couple anymore, or give more dimension to Star. It, in a way, only just limits her to being an accessory still, but an accessory that has to be saved.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. And speaking of needing to be saved, this is actually right before we get Lucy going to check on Max and getting nearly bitten by Thorn the dog.
Mm-hmm.
This is fun.
It is fun, but it's one of those things where you're just like, wow, yeah, okay, so women in jeopardy. That's what this movie likes to do, apart from like sexy boys.
She hightails it and saves herself, so no one saves her.
Yeah, she hops real quick over that fence.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get my timing messed up, and we are now at the dinner scene. So it's technically David is showing Michael, hey, we hang out in trees and then we eat people on the beach. And the flip side of that is also when we've got Max over at dinner passing all of the vampiric tests that the Frog Brothers have set up. So we're spilling holy water on his lap. We're feeding him garlic instead of, what is it, salt or something?
I think that's kind of my thing, is that I am so much more interested in this movie than I am the Michael initiation vampire stuff. And the irony, though, is that the Michael initiation vampire stuff is like what Joel Schumacher like added to the film.
Yeah, but I think part of it is that we're like, our attention is constantly being divided, so you feel like you're not getting quite enough of either of those two things. If it was just Michael and David, you might feel differently.
Maybe.
I actually do like that scene, though, because it takes the stereotypical, folklore of vampires and just, they take everything out of the book, and they yet don't think about, oh, well, we invited him in. Maybe that's why.
But hey, has that? I've actually never, because that's the thing, right? So they invited him into his house, which means none of the normal vampire stuff works on him. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's definitely a twist.
Yeah, I mean, and also I think Michael invites him in, so they may not have heard him do that.
No. I know that, but I again, like, the whole thing in this movie is that, okay, vampires don't have a reflection. But because Max is invited into this house, he does have a reflection and mirrors in this house.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing, too. I've never heard of that in vampire lore before.
I mean, usually we appreciate it when they switch things up and kind of make it their own, right?
It's not a critique. It's just an observation. Like, I'm just like, it's a good, because again, like, when he walks in, he's like, you're the man of the house. I'm not going to come in until you invite me. And it's like, okay, well, red alert right there, obviously.
Yeah.
So I do love that, we get the scene of him passing. But yeah, then at the end, it's like, you invited me into your house. None of that is going to work.
Oh, it's real campy too, how like the brothers try every little thing. And it's also, it kind of plays on that aspect of, you're a preteen and your mom, you don't have your dad's not around and this guy's trying to move in on your mom and you don't like him. It's like this darker version of that, trying to scare him away or make him look bad. So it works well within the context of the mom not thinking her son is just like crazy. She's like, why don't you let me just date? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I loved all of that
Mm-hmm.
in Fright Night. Dick move. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Hey, it's your opinion, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Fright Night too, you know? So I think both have their pros and cons, and like both are really fun movies. So,
Right.
Yeah.
you know.
I think this actually made me appreciate Fright Night more because I was like, oh, okay. I think I was taking a lot of the comedy in Fright Night for granted. And then when I saw this, I was like, here's another way of doing it where you can balance the horror and the comedy. It's just in a different way. And I just happen to prefer Fright Night more.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
Okay, so after the eventful dinner, so this is failed date number 2 for Lucy and Max, in the morning, Star arrives, and she basically is like, I am here to explain myself. And
Yeah.
this is all so boring, if not for Corey Haim being delightful as he's trying to sleep and reacting at the same time.
And she's a vampire! And don't tell me she's still a good person!
I loved it. I was loving this. I actually really, really like Corey Haim's performance in this film.
Really
Yeah,
good.
he's great in this movie.
He's like the burst of energy compared to Michael's like doom and gloom.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're really good character foils for sure. And he's not like a super annoying little brother. I like their relationship. They're really, really cute, and you can tell they love each other even when like they're going through these tough times or annoying times. I think their dynamic is actually really sweet.
Right. And it seems like their real life dynamic was actually very similar, where Jason Patric was kind of looking after Corey Haim during the shooting. I can't help but wonder if this film would work better for me if there was a more emotive or interesting performance in this Michael role, like if it wasn't Jason Patric, because I do find him quite flat.
But see, I wonder if that's an intentional choice, though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's an accident that he's playing it like this.
It's hard to say. Like, I don't know enough about him as an actor to say, oh, well, this is an off-kilter performance for him. But I do think in the world of the film, it is very deliberate. But I don't know. It's hard for me to be like, what does Star see in this guy? What does David see in this guy? He's boring.
I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
pretty.
something about like an attractive face and a calm and cool personality, like a guy who doesn't have to go above and beyond to get your attention and isn't super over the top. And I don't know. I like guys who are a little bit more chill instead of having to be the center of attention all the time. You know what I mean?
And to quote Maya Rudolph in Big Mouth, the dumb ones pound the hardest.
Oh my God!
God.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
And so true.
They have to be good at something, right?
Oh boy. Okay. Before we go too far down that garden path, let's come back to this. Okay, so Star and Michael and Sam recruit the Frog Brothers. They steal Grandpa's car. They head off to the hotel so that we can rescue Laddie, who we have not mentioned is played by Chance Michael Corbett. Who could care? This is not a character.
Like,
this is a child in vampire makeup.
Why is he there?
That's the thing too. They're literally okay. There's no reason to have Laddie and Lottie, this child in this movie, except to like
for this scene, so that we need to go back. Yes.
Well, but it's also like a reason to be like, okay, well, why isn't Star doing anything? Because she's looking after this useless child.
Exactly.
I never understood Lottie's presence.
Well, yeah, like why did they give Lottie blood?
I just don't even. Why? Maybe, I don't know. Do you think that Star was supposed to be the mother to these boys?
It's
and
a maybe.
Max was like,
No.
You suck at your job, so now I'm going to find another one?
No, because I think David turned Star of his own accord without Max's input. Because she says, like, oh, yeah, Michael was supposed to be my first kill, and he was supposed to complete my transformation. But then Max kind of, I mean, we don't hear this, but Max is the one who told David to turn Michael, so that immediately put the kibosh on that plan.
I don't think that dismisses what Marissa is suggesting, though, because I could see Max saying, okay, well, you're attracted to this girl. How about we get her on side by turning her maybe younger brother or a boy that she babysits into a vampire? Because that's literally what his plan is. Instead of just turning Lucy into a vampire, he has to turn her sons first. Max is not a good planner.
If you remake this movie, the opening scene is Star babysitting Lottie and getting attacked by vampires.
There you go.
God, Lottie drove me crazy. I never liked this character.
Yeah, Lottie sucks. And Lottie is on the cover of the fucking DVD.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
because you can be a preteen and super cool and party all night and never die also.
That's not even, I mean, is like 10 a preteen?
I think that's where, because Star is like the Wendy of this story, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, it's supposed to be like, oh, like the Lost Boys are this wide range of ages, so we have to throw a kid in there.
Okay.
Ugh, don't bring your classic literature into this. The children's literature, nobody wants to talk about that, Trace.
Yeah.
That's a joke, because I have a YA podcast. All right. Okay. Yeah, so this is the part where we get the great visual of these Lost Boys hanging upside down as they sleep, and then we stake Marcos, and it just goes to shit. We have blood, blacky blood, oozing and shooting everywhere. The vampires wake up. David grabs Sam. He almost gets away. We've got the hand burning. Fucking love the shot of David with the single tear after he gets burned. Love it.
I think this scene is great.
That wasn't planned at all. Like, the contacts apparently were so painful. And it was like back in the day, there weren't like soft contacts. These were
they were hard.
Plastic painted pieces of plastics that put in your eye. And his eyes were so irritated, they started naturally like tearing up, and they thought, "Oh, that's a great shot." So
that's great, Kiefer. Keep doing it. Yeah, keep crying. Keep suffering.
Love that pain.
So I've never disliked Kiefer Sutherland, but I've never been like, "Oh yeah, Kiefer Sutherland." But like,
oh, he's great.
Well, yeah, as a person, I think I read interviews with him, and I'm like, God, he sounds like a nice guy. Like, I just want to hang out with him.
Yeah, he's Canadian.
Totally.
No, one of the interesting things for me, having seen this film so late, is that I saw him play a derivation of this role in Stand By Me, where he's basically the punk, guy who's gonna fuck you up, only he's not a vampire in that movie. So when I did eventually see this, I thought, oh, they just put him in prosthetics and he's given the same performance.
I mean, look, Kiefer Sutherland plays a great villain, but we all know his big one. The best role he's ever played is Bob Wolverton in Freeway.
I was just about to say Freeway.
Previous episode.
That's Not All I Did to Grandma.
Oh my God, that movie.
That movie, indeed.
But there are a lot of really cool practical effects in that scene.
Yeah. Oh, when Marco just gushes blood after getting staked, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So good.
And bye-bye Alex Winter.
It's so good, yes.
R.I.P. in this movie, because he's done so.
Yeah, he's the first one out.
Well, he had to go off and prep for Bill and Ted. So.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because he dies the stereotypical death of a stake through the heart, right? So I like how they knock that out first.
Yeah, we'll give it to you because you're expecting it, and then we'll give you more interesting things later.
Yeah, and even the Frog Brothers, like when they talk about the comic books and how the vampires could die, it's like they never go like one way every time, like they could explode. There's like some foreshadowing there that that there's going to be some different kills and some different fight scenes that you may not be expecting, but they do that traditional one first, which I kind of like.
Right. And that's really where we're at in this film. So we try to let Lucy know what's going on. She thinks that it's all about Max and the surrogate father figure kind of deal. And then we go into defensive prep mode. So we close up all of the windows. We start making garlic holy water in the bath, and we're getting ready for battle. And that's more or less what the rest of the movie is.
Yeah, it's like Home Alone style. They just booby trap the shit out of their house, the grandpa's house.
I thought obviously, we all know this came out before Home Alone, but yes, like, I'm like, oh, Home Alone, like, remove the vampire aspect, and this is what he's doing. This bathtub kill, by the way.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love that we think it's over, and then it goes on and gets better.
The blood that just pours out of the pipes, it floods the bathroom.
Good.
It is so I was watching this, and I was like, holy shit, this rocks!
That's what I'm saying. Like, the last part of the film is so much fun.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. Like, the last 20 minutes, I'm like all in on this movie.
Well, it's because there's also no time to breathe, because we've done all the character development. We've gotten everybody to where they need to be. So now it's like, cool, let's pay it off. Let's just go balls to the walls, get rid of these fucking vampires. It's like death.
Well, and it's weird because, like, as much as I love this film, it's very visual in a lot of ways. But I'm not really emotionally invested in these characters at all. So, even with these vampires who die at the end, a part of me isn't like, hell yeah, Michael, or hell yeah, Star. Yeah. It's just like, whoa, that death is really cool and executed really well.
Even Frog and Edgar, though, it's like, okay, they're the cute kids that, like, want to, like, kill vampires, but it's like, I don't really care about them. It's just cool to see all this mayhem go down.
Yeah, like, if we lost any one of them,
I wouldn't care.
Pause a beat for grief and then move on.
Yeah, like, pour a beer out and move on. It really, or pour a Dr. Pepper out, like the ones from Grandpa's fridge. But I think, I don't think that they have had previous experience actually killing vampires or executing them, because they're still so shocked by everything. Like, they're prepared and they know what to do, but they're like, oh my God, the aftermath. You know what? Like, they're not expecting how, like, grotesque it actually is.
It's a childlike wonder.
Yeah, it really is.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like these fantasies and adventures that you want to live out, but then you don't realize how hardcore they are until, like, you actually do them.
Shit, I'm killing someone right now.
And compare their reactions to, again, the bathtub kill, but then when we get this stereo kill.
Yes. My love. Oh my God.
Like, another one where it's, we think it's over, but then he just blows up.
Yes.
I love that this is basically Sam taking care of business all by himself.
Yeah, it's like him growing up in a way. But, I mean, that scene is so much fun, too. And a little bit of pyrotechnic work. Pretty cool.
But it kind of says something, though, right? So, like, these two deaths are awesome. And it's not that I don't like the Michael David fight, but it's almost anticlimactic compared to the other two.
It's so easy, and it's over too quickly.
Yes. But that's because we're waiting to get Max in here. Which, again, like I think I saw, like, Kiefer Sutherland, out of the main characters, has the least amount of lines in this movie. And probably the least amount of screen time, too.
But he makes up for it in charisma.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about, like, their stamina and their presence and just the way that they hold themselves and the way that they look that radiates their characters so much. And if they talk too much, I think it would take away from the appeal and their whole mystique. But yeah, he has like one-liners at the end of scenes a lot, I think. But I mean, what was it? Dwayne, not Marco, but like...
The other one is Paul.
You know the vampires.
Paul and Dwayne like barely talk at all, and they're just so beautiful. And it's like, are y'all props too? I mean, I don't know.
Basically.
It's just so...
They're male models that we move from scene to scene to make myself seem cool.
Right? It's just, it's kind of strange. But I mean, in a way, I do kind of like that they're not overly talkative. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting that they took a lot of those choices because the dialogue is extremely minimal. But it still works. I kind of like his death at the end.
What, we're talking about David?
Yeah, how he's impaled by the antlers. I feel like it's a different form of the traditional stake through the heart and dies on a table of death, ultimately. I mean, there's so many bones on that table.
Well, also because he's the only vampire that doesn't, like... the 3, I guess, that doesn't get like melty or torn apart, because hypothetically, if there was a sequel soon after this movie, they could have brought him back.
Yes.
Which of course was the plan. Yeah.
Yes. So for those reasons, like, I like it and I see it, but I also can understand how it's anticlimactic. But I wonder if it was supposed to be this whole emotional thing, because again, the song comes back. And
It's his lover. It's his lover. He just killed.
Yeah, there's like an emotional part going on there.
Yeah, because this is really a sex death scene, right? Like, we're penetrating David, we're penetrating our lover with these antlers. And then the way that Schumacher shoots this, so I'm going to bring Kaiser back in a couple more times as we close this out. But Kaiser says, there's a tragic grace note to David's death. He looks nearly angelic.
Yeah.
The camera lingers on Michael as he wrestles with what he's done.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a relief there or something.
But I would argue we get something similar when Max comes in, because Max walks in, goes straight to David's corpse, and I don't know, like, it's not, there's just a look there that's like, my child.
Yeah, is it fatherly? Is it, you know, as we've talked
Something
about, a kind of
else?
predatory, like, you were the first, you were the young boy that I turned kind of deal, but
But that's the other thing, though, right? Because he, as far as we know, Max has only turned teenage boys into vampires. There is definitely something icky about that.
yeah, I've seen some people speculate that he only turned David and he didn't condone the other ones. It was David who then, you know, propagated the other ones because he wanted, like, cool friends. But that has to be something that you as a viewer bring to the reading, because I don't think it's supported by the text.
Because the story that I'm going with is that Max is this very wealthy video rental store owner.
As one is, yes.
And he was David's sugar daddy.
Right.
That being said, though, when it comes to Max, I simultaneously don't like how quickly he's dispatched, but I also love how he's dispatched. This grandpa driving a car into his house is just... Oh, I love it. It's so funny.
It's hilarious how, like, he has these house rules and doesn't want, you know, Michael and Sam running around the house or anything, and don't touch this or don't touch that. But, like, sure, I'm just going to drive my car through my house and not care. It's a very, like, stoner old man thing to do. And then he goes and gets a drink. It's like,
I mean, I guess we didn't talk about it much either, but I mean, we have to, like, talk about it. Maybe there's not really much to talk about, but I love that at least we get the mom learning the truth. We get her seeing her boyfriend with his mask face, and she relents. She accepts to save her children. Which is where I guess the family values that you're talking about, Joe.
So sad. She would, like, do anything for her sons.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point, Trace, because Kaiser brings that up by suggesting the positive queer reading to this, or to the reveal that Max is actually the true villain of the film. Kaiser says the true villain wasn't the queer punks, but the straight business owner preying on the community while hiding behind the obvious outsiders.
Okay. I can go for that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Max impaled in. I love that the body goes directly into the fireplace, which is a logical place to burn things. You know, well, we can repair the rest of the house, but it's good that we didn't destroy too much more of it with fire. So the danger is done. And then, of course, if you want to read it from the conservative point of view, it's the unification of the family values. We've got Michael and Star and... fuck if I know, Laddie hanging out there as a nuclear family.
Hopefully Lottie would just, like, go home after that. I don't know.
Go find your parents.
Yeah,
like, just ship them off.
Laddie, who are you? Where do you come from?
No.
Do you have a place we can send you back to?
Why are you here?
Why are you here, Laddie? Who invited you?
Give him the milk carton with his face on it, drop him off at the boardwalk, and just say, hey, just wave this around a bit.
Or better yet, put him to work in the video store.
Oh,
he can sell comics along with the Frog Brothers.
True.
The video store is without an owner now, so yeah, Lucy's gonna own that shit.
Oh yeah,
hell
Lucy's
yeah.
taking that shit over. We're turning this town around.
I think Max had the foresight, because he didn't think he was gonna die. He had the foresight to be like, okay, let me put Lucy in my will. That should have been how it ended, actually.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure this whole movie takes place over, like, 3 days or something crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, it doesn't last very long. Like, things get going real quick.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they've been in town for even, like, a week. You know?
These people are trouble. They show up, they just start killing people.
Yeah.
They're killing respectable business owners. Like, it's been a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. it goes by so quick. But the ending is just, I get what you mean about how, like, it could have been a stronger fight off with both Max and David. But I think there was another alternative ending too, where like Max may not have died, and like they wanted to put like a mural on the side of the boardwalk and of him from like the 1900s or something, and his family. I don't know, alluding some way that
he'd been around forever.
Yeah, there was a couple of alternate endings, and they had this Lost Girls sequel in mind. So it's really, from a writing perspective, it's interesting that they had the choices that they did, because I feel like some of this was maybe in the back of their head, like as a possibility. Yeah. But it still worked. I mean, it wraps up pretty good as a single story, but they took it into sequels that I have not seen, and I don't know if I want to, but
they're sequels that came out like 20 years later, and like, but I don't even think I would call them a legacy sequel. I mean, they are, because it's like 20 years later, but it's like, I mean, they're direct-to-video sequels with only the Coreys in the first one, because I think Corey Haim had died by the time the third one was being made.
I think he's the only person from this film in it.
Feldman's definitely in it.
Yeah, Feldman. I didn't know Haim was in one of them. Is he?
I think he's in the second one, but
yeah, I think he's in the second one. Maybe. Oh, fuck. Hold on, actually. Let me... So, okay, what happens? So Corey Haim is in the second one, but during the closing credits.
Weird.
Okay, oh my god, y'all. Okay, in a mid-credit scene in Lost Boys: The Tribe, Edgar encounters Sam Emerson, Corey Haim, now a vampire. They exchange some dialogue and charge at each other as the credits resume.
Oh no.
That's absurd.
That is absurd. And again, the third one is Lost Boys: The Thirst, but they can't have Corey Haim in it because he died by the time it was being filmed. So in the third movie, Sam is dead. It basically says Edgar visits the grave of Sam Emerson, whom Edgar was forced to kill when he turned into a vampire. So he basically is led to believe that he killed him between movies.
Right.
What a terrible betrayal of characters.
Boo. They've been trying to get a CW TV show of this off the ground. They filmed a pilot. It didn't go to air. And now we're apparently getting a whole new movie with Noah Jupe and that bratty Jaden Martell kid.
Yeah, that news came out recently.
Oh, no, it's filming. It's not out.
Oh, no, the news came out.
The news is, yes, correct. Okay,
I just don't even think this film can be touched. And I've said that before, and I've been proven wrong, especially with Argento Suspiria, because I really liked the remake.
Yeah.
But this one, I don't know. I just, we'll see.
Yeah, Trace and I speculated about different directions it could go in the Patreon newsletter about this. Mm-hmm. And the thing that we kind of came to consensus about was that it cannot be set in the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, I think they're burnt out on the 80s, right? With Stranger Things and all these other throwbacks.
You gotta think so.
Surely.
Apparently, the details on this new remake have been kept a secret, but it has been described as being set in the present day.
Okay.
There we go.
So there's that at least. But I mean, yeah, I agree. It's one of those things, Marissa, where you're like, well, I'm not optimistic, but I would love to be proven wrong. You know, like you want a remake to be good. It's just like, it's hard to be optimistic sometimes.
Well, it's going to be like Fright Night too, where like, I'm sorry, I can't imagine Noah Jupe and Jaden Martell making fuck eyes at each other.
No,
it's not going to be queer.
That's the thing. It's like the sexual chemistry and the fucking pheromones that just radiate off of this film. I don't know if you can replicate this.
Yeah, like you need a movie that is DTF, and good luck recapturing that magic.
And
in the year of our Lord 2022.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because there's the Vanity Fair article that has a subline that says, "Can there be death by stereo with AirPods?" It's like, probably not, dude. Probably not. But you know what? We've seen this with how I was introducing my mom the other day to the new Chucky film. Not the sci-fi series, but the one that came out a couple years ago.
The 2019 remake.
Yeah, and it's just, that's how it's going to be for a long time. And we have all these remakes and all these sequels coming out, and they're all modernized. And it's like something we kind of gotta get used to and roll with, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're hard advocates of we will give it a try and hope that it is good.
Yeah.
Because if you go into every remake thinking, oh, well, this is going to be garbage, it's like, well, you still got that original. It's not like they're taking it away from you.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Yeah.
It's there for sure, and it's so much fun.
Well, I mean, again, if they can at least make it fun, by all means. Like, let's have a fun vampire movie.
What if the saxophone guy comes back and is a vampire in it? I mean, you just never know.
God, he's the ringleader.
Yes, that'd be kind of amazing. So I hope that there's some like really gimmicky stuff in there that are throwbacks. That's one reason I watch the remakes, is like I'm interested in throwbacks and references a lot to see how they adapt and what they're doing. But there is a novelization of The Lost Boys that I want to try and track down. Tracer's story about Orson Scott, that book that
oh my god, yeah. Make sure it's not the Orson Scott Card Lost Boys.
I know, but it's so funny.
Mormon propaganda.
I would love to find that novelization though. But yeah. I mean, we'll see how it goes. But The Lost Boys, the original, is just, it's so special. Very special film.
Well, and you know what? That's a good segue into that is The Lost Boys. So, Marissa, what are your final thoughts on this film?
I fucking love it still. Always. Always and forever. Always love it. I can watch this movie anytime. It will always make me laugh and swoon and marvel at just it's a capture of the times. I love the movie. It's a feel-good movie for me in a lot of ways. So I'm really glad that we got to talk about it. And it's just one of those cult classics that'll last a long time. And it'll be fun to see how, these new filmmakers take this and roll with it with new blood. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really glad I got to revisit this. I've been putting it off for so long because I was just like, I really just didn't enjoy it that first time I watched it, and I did enjoy it a lot more this time. I still don't think it's like amazing, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I certainly see the appeal now. Whereas 14 years ago, I didn't really see it. So
it's progress.
Yeah, I like it.
And for me, I mean, sadly, I'm coming in on the lower end of this spectrum.
That's okay.
It doesn't quite work for me, but I can understand why it works for other folks. I think my issues are just there's too many characters and we don't get quite enough of anybody. And I wish that Jason Patric was a bit more dynamic. I wish that I was getting more Kiefer Sutherland because he is so good. And the tricky queer dynamics are really at play for me. You can see Joel Schumacher trying to push up against the restrictions of the post-AIDS crisis and the conservative family values and that sort of thing. It can make for interesting discussion, but as a film, it's just not for me.
I mean, I don't think there's a lot of... Well, no, I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah, that's fine. That is fine.
There we go.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, before we announce what we're covering next week, Marissa, where can people find you on the social medias?
You can find me. I'm on Twitter. My handle is just Marisa_Mirabal, Mirabal. And I'm on Instagram at Marisa_Mira. That's private though, but you can shoot your shot and see if I'll accept you.
If you look like Jason Patric or the saxophone guy, shoot that shot.
If you look like one of those 4 vampires, especially Michael or Paul or Dwayne, yeah. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, you can find me. Just Twitter's fine. I'm not on there all the time, but yeah.
And be sure to listen to her podcast, Black Magic Coven.
Yes.
Well, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Horror Queers. Join our Facebook Horror Queers group to hang out with other listeners. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered and look at all of our lists. And, of course, go to our YouTube channel to watch, you can watch our Microqueers recordings, or, because right now Microqueers is being replaced by Chucky reviews, go watch us talk about Chucky with our Chucky dolls. So those are really fun.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a moment, please rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. Apple Podcasts is the best one, though. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. So go subscribe because we will have episodes on the I Know What You Did Last Summer series, Sci-Fi Slumber Party Massacre remake, Antlers, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, and an audio commentary on the original Resident Evil from 2002. Joe?
Yes?
What are we talking about next week?
I feel like it's a long time coming, but people probably won't think that we were ever going to cover it. But I'm feeling a little TV hungry, Trace. And also, even though we've talked about a number of vampire texts recently, we're going to kind of stay in that wheelhouse. So we are going to be talking about Buffy the Vampire TV show. Sorry, Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show. Even though this episode does not actually have vampires in it, really, we're going to be covering Once More with Feeling on its 20th anniversary.
Woo! All right, for all you people who don't know Buffy.
Are there anybody? Really?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of the younger people don't really know Buffy. So everyone, This is season 6, episode 7. Go find it wherever it's streaming, because I'm sure it's somewhere.
It is, yes.
And yeah, I mean, that's it. It's a musical episode. It's fucking fantastic. I listened to this soundtrack on repeat for a full year. So, yeah, come back for the 20th anniversary of Buffy's wonderful musical episode. But until next week, we can cross out the Lost Boys.
Indeed. And cross out 150 episodes of Horror Quiz.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.